some links where you actually can find it and get the reference and extra information on this course. What are you actually guys are studying? What sort of fields you're covering? I suppose communication, journalism, or some others studying politics, or I don't know. You can. You study international relations, and what are you guys studying? Communication and media. Yeah. What are you guys? Journalism, right. The others? Marketing. Okay, cool. Okay, so very much all linked to social science and some economics. Okay, well, if we imagine something, if we picture an idea, okay, normally we can figure out the ideas have a particular meaning. Everything has a meaning, right? From objects to blurry things like sunrise, everything has a meaning. But the meaning, in essence, is constructed by societies, by collective groups, by cultural exchanging. This is the way we construct, we understand what things actually are. And by meaning, I'm going to start defining it as a result of society constructing in a process of communicative action. It might sound a bit blurry. Okay, what it means, something that society is constructing, like the image, a building, or something. What you mean, guy, but constructing, I'm going to explain myself in a minute. And a process of communicative action. Okay. In order this to happen, we need actually activating minds. In fact, we need people to get connected with ideas in order to share that need. I don't want to go deep inside into theory and confuse you guys, but I want you to tell me, what is this? Anyone? What is this?
16th of March.
16th of March, okay. What is the difference between 16th of March or 17th of March? Or 23rd of March? What is it? What can you see here?
Okay, we see Latvian flags there.
Right, Latvian flag, okay. Probably behind that, what would you see, guys?
It's kind of parade, or?
Yeah, it's kind of parade, okay. What it means? Right, cool. I stick to the idea. Okay, there are beliefs in that flag. It's a flag that in particular context means nation, means history, means a common agenda for a lot of people, that we share that knowledge, we share that idea, right? It's in our minds, we think that way, and we attribute particular meaning to that flag. However, in this context, 16th of March, that particular flag, that means just something very important, which is a country, your country, most of you, could be something very controversial. Right? This is controversial, not because it's a flag there. Okay, it's the same flag in a badge. Right? And for me, it means probably exactly the same thing that this. Flag standing raised, and and this is a flag in a badge, right? But the particular construction of the set and the image deployed in media, in history, in politics, attributes a different meanings. For one, people could mean something to be proud of. Some others could mean something not to be proud of. For some people, it's very important in history. It's a moment in history in which Latvia was constructed as a nation, and for others, is actually not a right good thing to say. I'm not going to explain, I'm not going to go deep inside into whether it's right or wrong. This is not my point. I'm not trying to make a point on what is right or what is wrong. My point is, please understand that this is a construction. It's in your mind, it's in people's minds, and that's the way we actually attribute a meaning. We construct that meaning through communicative action. Another example will be given for you later, but let me go into marking out what you guys are coming to look at today at this lecture. This is a traditional political communication model. I took it from a very classical book from communication, or political communications, called, well, The Introduction to Political Communications. Whoever is interested in it, we can go through. And this is the way it used to work, any message and the meanings. You don't need to write it down, and I'll send it to you. This presentation is available actually online, so this is going to be for you available. The point is that actually politics, it was very much mediated through media. Media play a key role in the relationship between civil society and the political organizations. These political organizations could be parties, could be political public organizations, could be lobbies, or, well, McNair also includes terrorist organizations and governments. You can figure out the way that actually media mediates this relationship. On the one hand, it deploys, it constructs, it reproduces news for the civil society to be informed, to be also make some comments and some analysis. Most of the classic model is actually giving the chance to people to write letters to, for instance, editors and say, well, I agree with this or I disagree with that. In the early 90s, in the late 80s, you could write a letter to your editor, say, okay, I agree with this, I disagree with that. That is kind of a classical model. What we're discussing today is this new model. This is what might be happening now. And this new model is far more complicated than the classic one. As you can see, there are a lot of resources that all of a sudden are available in these new political communication flux. What are those resources? You pretty much know most of them, right? Okay, again, media still exists, and the relationship between politics or political organizations and civil society still remains in the domain of the media. Yes, however, we can get in touch directly with political organizations, we can actually get in touch with lobbyists, we can even get in touch with terrorist organizations if that's the case, right? It works beyond the control of media. Media does not have the monopoly of that relationship anymore. Now, what we're going to discuss now is how this happened, in a way, very briefly, and then is it actually a real change? Has actually changed everything, and now we live in a completely different era? All right, please bear in mind those questions. And video should work now. I'm pretty sure you came across with this video. Let me just play it for those who have not.
Mama yetu yetu liye mbinguni, yetu yetu amina.
video like this, you get excited. Wow, well, this is a massive change, and everything has actually changed in terms of constructing the message, in terms of new media setup, and also the relationships between the consumers and the producers. So you see, it looks like this is the new world. On the right hand side, you get the old world. It's actually a very recent picture I took in my country a couple of months ago. But well, okay, let's consider the old world, right? Where people used to go to these shelves or booksellers, and where also they sell newspapers, and you just get along with the news. On the other hand, it looks like it's the new revolutionary world, where actually you can even conduct a revolution as such, like in Iran. In the picture you can see it on the bottom right, where actually new media and mobile phones particularly play a role. I wouldn't say a key role, I would just say a role. But also with these fancy tablets, I don't know if you guys have them or you just fancy them, but you know, they're amazing gadgets, and they can do a lot of things and beyond imagination. We will discuss that in a minute. But we need to, okay, stop our excitement there and say, okay, what has actually changed? What is the relationship between communication, politics, the media, in this whole context, right? And let me give you some data. It's always safe to start from data. I went through the World Bank data, global internet connectivity, and I did this comparison table. It roughly tells you where Latvia is. I just wanted to pick some data from the world, the high income group of countries where actually Latvia is part of, the Eurozone, of course, where everyone wants to know what's happening in the Eurozone, and then Latvia. What is the outstanding data there? Look at the numbers, for instance, of internet users in the 2000 year. In Latvia, there was 6.3. 2009 is 66.7. Okay, the shift is massive. Or look at the mobile phone subscriptions. In 2000, there were 16.9 in Latvia. In Europe, there were 60%, it was much higher. But 10 years after, 99.5. Meaning as in everyone has a mobile phone in Latvia. Another outstanding figure, interesting, is that, for instance, the urban population hasn't changed that much in the Eurozone, and in Latvia certainly remains the same, and the high-income groups haven't changed. Why that is important, you might ask yourselves. Well, precisely because the world has actually changed from a rural world to an urban world. Something that seems not to be the case in Europe and in Latvia and stuff. But something that is very important to see is that actually 100% of subscribers has broadband internet subscriptions. Therefore, practically everyone is enjoying a broadband service. Everyone can play videos, everyone can upload videos, anyone can produce media products. Let's get slightly further down. This is just a sample. These two slices coming up, they're just samples. And so far so good. You think, okay, internet is all over the place, internet is there for everyone, and everyone is accessing, and we saw this massive revolution where, you know, even people is getting divorced due to social media and so on and so forth. Well, thus we get all this data you can go through later, but let's see carefully some data. For instance, I don't know what you think, but somehow Facebook and Draugiem in Latvia are competing each other, right? Some people like them more because it's so global, blah, blah, blah. Some others like the Draugiem because it's so local and you can get along with your sort of environment. That's fine. So we're going to go through both, right? Just as a sample. The actual penetration of population in Latvia, according to Czech Facebook, which seems to be the more reliable source of data, is 15.5% of the population of the almost 2 million Latvians living in the country. Therefore, the penetration of offline population is something around 23%. If we see the sent data, you can see that practically 76%, 8 out of 10 people under the age of 45 are users. Whereas the other way around happens when it comes to people over 45. Only 11.5% of online population. This is data on online population. But if you see the whole country, actually data is not that exciting anymore. For instance, only 8% of people is actually consuming, allegedly, products on Facebook in Latvia if they are over 45 years. 45 years is not old. There is a lot of productive people involved in businesses, involved in creative media, involved in a number of activities not only related to media, but any sort of businesses that are over 45. And certainly they are not on Facebook. At least the statistics are saying that. Draugiem, okay, it was a bit tricky to get some statistics. It's slightly more difficult to get statistics from Draugiem, but these are roughly some numbers. 60, let's put it 60% of the population, according to the research I could find on EAC Education EU, is actually on Draugiem. But again, when we go down to the age of these users, most of them are between 16 and 29. And if you go from users from 30 to 45, the figures decrease to 11%. And well, if we put, I didn't bother, but if we put 55 onwards, probably the data is going to be much lower. So from this point of view, that excitement about social media, it becomes like, okay, it's fine, but it seems to be just for youngsters or for youth or for the new generations. Is that correct? If we consider, for instance, a strategy, a media strategy, a marketing campaign, if we consider a political campaign, if we consider a press release, if we consider to transform the whole platform of media production into just social media, is that going to reach the population of, for instance, Latvia? Is it going to be effective? Is it going to be correct? This is a graph, and please apologize because the graph is a bit blurry. I couldn't get the picture higher. It actually has been constructed by the University of Queensland and the Green Turner Group. It's actually very useful, very didactic piece of data, because there's a comparison between the old media and the new media. The old media used to be, as you probably know, guys, centralized mediation. Meaning as the institutional had control of the information, they produced, they edited, and they trimmed the information they wanted to come up or not, and then they published and broadcast it. Right? From the centralized mediation, it was going up to the public opinion, and the public opinion later reproduced the piece of information in different ways, both by republishing or by consuming and transforming or challenging in a way. Right, so from the centralized mediation system, the point, it was pretty much described as the first slice, where everything has to go through the media, media control. Now, of course, the resources or the platforms in which the materials were produced were TV, print, and radio, essentially, and that is actually in some countries the trend is still very strong, especially in undeveloped countries. Radio stronger than print. That has a very simple explanation. illiteracy is something that is very much happening up to very right now. So if you cannot read and write, why are you going to buy a piece of paper? Something that, for instance, in Northern Europe is pretty much gone. Now, you can say that centralized media or mediation, it was oriented to individual consumption. You buy your newspaper, the newspaper that actually you like, or you play the music that you like, or you consume whatever piece of media is produced in a way that you decided. New media has a different perspective. It's a distributed mediation. It's something like the slides I was showing, this bitmap. We're going to come back later to something similar. And what it means, that distributed mediation, is basically that the control of what is being said is no longer centralized in the institution that is producing the piece of information. It's rather on the consumer side. Syndication, it means that you can actually use that information, use that piece of information and transform it, and making it different platforms and syndicate it into a different formats. It obviously can be contributed. You can find actually that's wrong. The piece of media is not completely, the content of the piece of media is not complete, so therefore you can contribute it, you can enhance it. And this is bi-directional mean of communication, right? The other one used to be one-directional, and this tend to be two-directional or multi-directional way of exchanging. Now, of course, there are a lot of resources. There are a couple of ideas, for instance, the blogs or the vlogs, forums, wikis, podcasts. Well, there's a number of resources that can be named, but I want you to, I'll add that piece of extra box on the right, well, on your left, because I think this particular graph is missing these three key concepts on new social media. And news in social media era are basically transmedia, multi-platform, and multi-format. In 3 words, you get news today, and then you read the news on, I don't know, Twitter, and then you retweet it, and then you see the same news on Facebook, and then probably you're going to switch the TV and see the same news on home presented by, I don't know, someone in other part of the world on CNN, and then at the same time is someone actually writing a comment and saying that actually that's not right. There are further data that's being challenged by some other producer, and so on and so forth. So that means that that particular piece of media is being transmediated. It's no longer just one piece, it's no longer just printed, it's no longer just TV broadcasted. It could be multimedia at the same time. It's obviously multi-format because it could be transformed and could be transplanted in a way from one platform to another platform. From printed could be easily become a video. If you open one of the portals, web portals in Latvia, most of the time they have photos, they have videos, they have links. Otherwise, it's too plain, it's too boring. You're not going to consume it anymore, right? And the newspaper has no capability to offer you that. Nevertheless, newspapers are still sold with a lot of problems, of course. We're going to start discussing why they still exist in it. It's such a difficult situation. And let's go back to the main question of today's lecture. How can be understood the complex relationship between politics, media, and communication in this whole context that I just drafted to you? Let's start for the mistake. Well, I consider this a mistake. We can debate on it. Why is a mistake? Someone can explain what is there, or have you actually come across with this? Yes, why is it?
Why you consider it as a mistake?
No, why, what is it? Why is this guy, well, an African guy there with a hand?
It's
Connie.
It's Connie. Yeah. Okay. What is Connie?
The bad guy.
Yeah, the bad guy. Good. Excellent. Yeah. It's the bad guy. Why?
Well, it is in that way it is how to say, presented by the good guys who try to fight to solve the problem in South America, whereas this Connie is.
Well, it's actually not in South America. He's in Africa.
Sorry.
But doesn't matter. I do know what you mean. I mean, there's a play between the bad guy, who's this Connie,
Yeah.
something, and the good guys who happen to be Americans,
Yeah.
right? And in between, there is a story of a little boy who, at the age of 5, is able to understand the problem, right? The problem is that is this evil character kidnapping people, and well, this is not just people; it's children like himself, and that is really sad. Right. Why is a mistake? Simply because it's breaking a simple rule. Misrepresentation and oversimplification. Right. The problem in Central Africa is far more complex than just a guy kidnapping children. Right. It's far more complex. It has a lot of more issues in terms of ethics, in terms of businesses, in terms of interests. It's not just one guy kidnapping children. Therefore, I consider this campaign, I consider the whole setup of meaning, as we discussed at the beginning, a mistake. It's a wrong meaning. It means that just by making one click, you can solve a problem. And or just by flagging, I don't know, what is this called? The banner with the Connie 2012, you're going to solve the problem, which is not going to happen. In reality, we all know deep inside, even those who are deploying the campaign, they know that it's not going to happen. The problem is not going to be solved. That simple. Therefore, the key point, the starting point to understand the complex relationship is by actually avoiding the mistake. Right. I just given these 3 little messages to you. For instance, well, first is avoiding misrepresentation or oversimplification, but also the critical analysis that could be a very useful tool for acknowledging the complexity of a particular issue, or putting ourselves on the safe side, but not ignoring it, at least saying, okay, this thing, I don't understand 100%, but at least I can see that it's difficult. But again, we come across with the problem of construction of meaning. At the beginning, I was deploying this, or I was screening these flags, and I'm hoping that you roughly understood what I mean by construction of meaning. I'm going to go back to that concept, which could be slightly more complicated to understand. This is a sentence by Manuel Castells, very popular in the communication theory writer. And he says, the network society is a culture of protocols of communication between all cultures in the world. The point is that all cultures in the world don't share the same meaning. Things in one culture could mean something different in another culture. And I'm not talking about radical different cultures. I'm just talking about people who actually live one next to another. It's just that happen to share slightly different beliefs. And that makes it far more complicated construction. And all this construction is actually a cultural product. What is this? Can someone explain to me what is this?
Going on in Latvia, someone go blonde.
Yeah, a go blonde. Yeah, exactly. It's a go blonde parrot, right? And someone could recall why the context, roughly?
What happens?
Yeah, why it happens exactly?
It's all about being proud of
What you are. Okay, fine.
Being
Being blonde. And what's wrong with being blonde?
nothing.
nothing is wrong. So why they come up with
Stereotypes.
stereotypes? All right, stereotypes are what? Cultural products, constructions, mental constructions. You imagine some stereotype and you reproduce it, right? Not only you yourself, because if you start doing the stereotype, imagining just by yourself, it means that you're actually nuts. The point is that it happens in a collective way. There is people constructing the meaning on, for instance, blonde ladies. The blonde ladies happen to come up with this very clever idea, for some might say, that it's actually good to come out and show that blondes are not stupid, blondes can do something about crisis, and actually is a very interesting movement. Why is interesting? Not because it's going to solve the crisis down or it's going to bring a new sense of gatherness among blonde people. It's just simply because it's a nice attraction. It became into a marketing piece of communication, right? It's been used by a number of companies in order to promote Riga. I just went to the website, it's actually more advertising than information. And it's really interesting. So why they steal this idea of advertising? Well, because it's delivering the right message for marketing, but not precisely for campaigning. And when you do a campaigning, the point is that you actually need to use two things. Two concepts are particularly important when you start constructing a campaign. And one of them is persuasion, and the other one is emotions. This is one of the best writers in recent times who's dealing with something called political psychology and political neuropsychology, which seems to be something very advanced. I really don't have the chance to read this book, and I would like to, and if you have the chance, apparently it's really interesting. I just could get some bits or bobs in Google of it. But this sentence was very interesting. It said political persuasion is about networks and narratives, because political brain is emotional brain. It's an emotional brain. This is why the states that really determine elections are voters' state of mind. Therefore, narratives are based on network effects. Network is a word that should be around when we start discussing social media. But it's not precisely a network in terms of technology. It's a network in terms of society. Four concepts are going to define these two ideas. Sorry for coming back. Persuasion and emotions. Hope is one of those emotions. I'm just putting this picture because I think it's very much popular when it comes down to picturing hope in political terms. Right. They were not much creative. They just put the picture of the guy and hope underneath. And that was it. Fantastic, fantastic work. But hope is a very important piece of campaigning. The other one, right the opposite. Fear. Right. This graffiti, I find it fantastic. Merry Crisis and Happy New Fear. You just need fear to deploy a campaign. If you feel threatened, you might listen to these people. Of course, you need enthusiasm. Right? Everyone who gets happy and you see there's energy around and there is a lot of people involved in that energy, so it brings something to you and sort of attracts you. And then you get this very important feeling of togetherness. You need to feel that actually someone else linked to you. So someone else is believing what you believe in. Someone else is engaged to what you are committing yourself. All those concepts seems to be quite modern or very much linked to a very sophisticated society in which you use concept, you use technology, you also use resources, you use the media in order to get together people with, I'm going to go back, hope, fight against fear, get a lot of enthusiasm, and also get together. But if you review history of your own country, you might find this absolutely astonishing piece of campaigning. This is a milestone. There were no mobile phones, there were no social media, there were actually a complete system of repression on top of the reproduction of meaning, yet millions gathered along 3 countries in order to deploy complete effective protest. Effective not in a way because of the protest, Latvia was independent, no, because it constructed a meaning. It was gathering people in a way that actually never happened before. And this is 2 decades earlier than any social media resources available, with a very much lack of resources, yes, media resources like freedom of speech or even platforms. Let's go to another example. But I'm pretty sure, well, I don't know if there is someone studying politics here, or political science, or maybe international relations. You might come across with this forthcoming election. For those who are not in political field, and next month is a presidential election in France. And my example is actually very, very fresh, because when I was doing this presentation, I had to come back again and redo it, because yesterday something happened and we changed completely my concept on what I wanted to say. So on the one hand, you can see the left guy, you know, and the right guy with their messages. Okay, the change is now on the one hand, and the France is fourth, right? Very strong country on the other. Okay, want to deal with the issues that France is going to face with the crisis and blah, 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 and the other because they're fed up of this guy. Okay, so far so good. And what is happening? I don't know if you came across with news yesterday, today, and if someone can tell me who's the guy on the right-hand side.
He's the guy who killed some people in a Jewish school, and that's quite explosive topic in France right now, because it depicts somehow the transmission from organized terrorism to individual terrorism, which is quite impossible to fight against, because it happens only on the basis of one individual.
It's a lot of issues, right? Whether he was trained with Al-Qaeda in Pakistan or not, there is a lot of debate. And then again, yeah, what you're saying, it's not about collective or networked terrorism, but individual terrorism, and with a very, very much impact with hard violence on individuals again and again. I don't want to discuss the issue of Mohammed Nermat, how was his surname? Yeah, Nermat. But the point of this guy is that actually is reinforcing the idea of forte. We need to be strong, right? If we're not strong, France is going to collapse. So up to yesterday, I was going to be completely sure that Holland is going probably to win the elections. I could say, okay, yeah, he has a lot of chances. Today, I could tell you that is doubtful. Why? On the one hand, it was interesting in this, well, sorry, you got the other way around. Sorry, I got this way, but you got the other way around. Well, what Hollande was doing, it was deploying a whole campaign on the image of Jean-François Mitterrand, who's the last well, socialist or leftist president in France. So far, so good. The problem is that the campaign was not prepared for such an event. Such an event, of course, is going to change the whole context of that particular election. But let me go, because as I promised, I don't want to go further than 1 hour so we can discuss a couple more issues. Let me go to a big change. I don't think that up to this point the relationship between politics, communication, and media has actually changed that much. Yes, social media exists. Yes, social media has changed platforms. Yes, the content and the products that we producing has changed. In fact, citizens are able to produce content. Yes, we agree on all that stuff. However, we still rely very much on mainstream media for this content to be reproduced, and most of this content must reach mainstream media in order to become important. However, mobile phones are particularly important to focus on and to spend a couple of minutes on. Why is mobile phones a big issue? Well, again, 5 years ago, mobile phones were just phones that you carry in your pocket. Today, they are a fantastic piece of machine. As this Spanish professor said, there is more technology on the phones, on those phones, than they used by humankind to go to the moon. These iPhones are able to produce more calculations, reproduce much more data than actually the whole database and the computers that were used in NASA in 1969. It's unbelievable. What is the three key points on this shift? On the one hand, we have mobile and real-time information management. 5 years ago, there were a dream on real-time information, and there were an option of mobile information management, but not in the scale and the multi-platform and multi-format that there is available today. You go with your mobile phone, you take a picture, you just upload it, or you just shot a little video, and then you upload it, and you make a comment, and maybe it might reach a good audience and perhaps the mainstream media. And not only is it going to be a piece of information, a piece of media data, but also it's going to change in a way the perception of particular subject. Yes, there is an option of being self-information producers. On the one hand, we have the capability to produce information, but also we are in a position to produce a very high quality information. There used to be just a very, very low quality or like amateur options. Today, the options are much broader. But there is another option is being discussed recently, and I find it very interesting for those who are into governance and policy making and accountability, or social accountability. That is called the mobile surveillance. Actually, the picture on top is a mobile surveillance platform or application, sorry, that allows you to actually check a particular building on your mobile phone. And this is something that I don't know if it's happening in other places. I just happened to meet the member of the parliament in Colombia that actually they deployed an application in their own offices in order to fight corruption, and they have cameras around. So anyone from the website, from the mobile phone, from whatever online gadget they could have, can actually look at the politicians and see what they're doing. Are they happy with this particular MP? Is very happy to open up and promote this new way of transparency. Right? Is it going to work? I don't know. It's just a technology that's been deployed in order to reproduce that idea, that new meaning of mobile surveillance. You can actually invigilate your politicians 24/7. That is something wicked. 5 conclusions in order for us to discuss. On the one hand, we got a massive change in society where actually we can access to digital technology. Digital technology was present years ago, but it was not easy to access. Society was not available to use digital technology. It was somewhere else, very well hidden, and that was it. But also we are able to produce content, both accessing to digital technology and producing content like never before. Media, the media is still very much gathering and holding the ways of reproducing content. They can use resources like agenda setting or framing in order to reshape a news, in order to prime a news, in order to conduct some or divert some particular opinion towards what they want to deploy. Now, I don't know if you're familiar with this concept of agenda setting or framing. Perhaps those who study journalism are slightly more aware of that, but we can discuss that idea later on. But basically, the point is that you never can say everything about one particular event. It's impossible. You cannot access to the whole information because precisely information is about constructing meanings. Therefore, agenda setting is just, okay, I'm selecting some particular data that you consider as an editor or as a newspaper or as a particular, say, business-oriented group or ideological group, say, this is what I'm going to be construct my news on, and that's it. And you leave a lot of information on the side. This is sort of setting an agenda on a particular event. Framing is going to put one thing on top of the others in order to outstand or to stress one particular meaning on top of the others. This is still happening all the time, every single day. However, social media has technical alternatives, right? And I should have underlined that technical alternatives to challenge media on that aspect. Again, we have the technical alternative. It doesn't mean that it's happening. It doesn't mean that we're challenging media from that point of view. But yes, the technicality of it is existing. It used to be completely different. But the effect is actually quite the opposite. In fact, we're reproducing agenda setting and framing by media. Most of the time, you use, I don't know who used Twitter, for instance. I don't know if there are Twitter users here, but most of the tweets that are reproduced or retweet are mainstream media tweets, right? Therefore, we're just reproducing what they say. Of course, there are a lot of citizen media and citizen journalism challenging the idea. Yes, but again, it's a matter of debate. Social dynamics are definitely going digital and mobile. Right? Our lives are going digital and mobile. Who is not using mobile phones anymore in this room? Who of you have a smartphone? Whichever it is, either iPhone or BlackBerry or Nokia or whatever. You have, you guys. Yeah, most of you. Yeah, the very few of us, we don't have smartphones, but life is going mobile, right? We get text all the time, and we don't need anymore to be in one place in order to get in touch. This basically means that we are going mobile. We can carry our own office, our own set of content with us wherever we go. We go in digital and we go in mobile. Are journalists going mobile? Are media going mobile? are politicians going mobile? Are those guys going digital? Most of them not. Right? Why they're not going mobile? Simply because it's a massive shift. And the problem is that the monitoring scenario is a new one. We have a new capabilities to challenge media and politicians from the civil society that 5 years ago didn't exist, not to mention 20 years ago. Nevertheless, the power relations between, again, social society, media, and political organizations is not going to disappear. It's not going to be that actually media is going to disappear, newspapers are going to go away, or political parties are going to disappear all of a sudden. That's simply not going to happen. It's just going to change. It's going to be reconstructed. The power relations between society through media and impacting in the political system are going to change. The ways of political system to communicate the message to the civil society is no longer mediated by media, as I will show you again with that particular figure I showed at the beginning. Therefore, the power relations are being reconstructed. And what I mean by reconstructed is that actually there is not going to be one way or another. This is not going to be the past or the present. It's just going to merge both attitudes into one complex relationship. To finish this first part, I will recommend this book and this quote on Benedict Anderson. This book is very much popular in nationalism studies, but with a strong impact on communication and media studies as well. Anderson says communities are to be distinguished not by their falsity or genuineness, but in the style in which they are imagined. And for now is all I can offer you guys. Open to hear your comments and questions and address perhaps some particular issues that you would like to discuss. And of course, if you want to access to this presentation and the handout that I heard that a few of you didn't get it, I uploaded and actually it's available on my site, but also we can discuss later. You can send it by email or whichever other way you use it. Okay, I don't know if there are questions or comments, and feel free to do it. Yes, please.
Do you know the concept of liquid democracy?
Of?
Liquid democracy.
Yes, it's been around that concept, but in what context?
It's quite popular among one German party, the Pirates, and they're using this concept of common knowledge to form their political agenda on a very democratic basis. And they are doing it actually through forums, through Twitter and social media in general. And I would like to ask you whether you see this kind of concept is able to take over also the established parties.
Okay, that's fine. I don't know if someone else wants to make a comment on related to that question. No? Well, you're probably not that much into politics. So, there is a challenge on politicians that is actually not matching the crisis, the financial crisis. The challenging to the empowerment of politicians is coming slightly further back. I would say for the year 2002, 2001, this feeling of, okay, politicians are kind of cheating on us is growing in many parts of the world. So what I'm addressing this point is because we need to immediately separate the idea of crisis of political representation from crisis of democracy. Right? I don't think that democracy is being challenged. I think the political representation is being challenged, right? And liquid democracy, what is trying to challenge is not democracy in itself at the beginning, but the political representation, right? There is an examples of these kind of forums in which you can, I mean, one of the most popular was Anonymous, right? And you know something about Anonymous is actually a very much anarchist movement, more than a political organization itself, right? People might think that it's destructive, that it's corruptive, and blah, blah, blah. Well, it's anarchism. Anarchism is a very radical position. And what they're trying to do is actually challenge not necessarily the whole system as such. On the one hand, of course, when you go down to radical positions, yes, of course, they're challenging everything, right? The whole system. But liquid democracy, well, the challenge is the way of representation. There are some, for instance, I would put into the liquid democracy example the attempt to rebuild the constitution in Iceland. Yeah, Iceland is redoing the constitution online. So it's actually no politicians doing it, it's just the people doing it online. You just go, click, account, blah, 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 and you start writing down the new constitution. You see, that challenging democracy, I don't think so. I think they're challenging the system that failed to represent them legitimately. And this is a new way. Of course, they're using social media, they're using digital technology, right? Because you need to get in touch some way, and certainly is useful in this particular context. I heard also some political parties, well, in Sweden there is the Pirates political party, something like that, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
In Germany as well.
In Germany too, yeah. And they basically are for, or there is also in Germany the Internet Political Party. There's actually an organization that wants everything to go online and full transparency, and everything moved into web platforms, and everything has to be discussed there. Fair enough. But again, it's not challenging democracy. The concept of representation, of deliberation, the idea of freedom of speech, the idea of institutions ruling the country, in fact, it's not certainly challenging power relations. It's just modifying the power relations, which is, I think, fair enough. It's good. I don't know if I answered roughly.
Yeah.
Yeah? Ooh. Any other comment on that?
Well, it's especially, I don't know so much about the Swedish Pirate Party, but as far as I'm informed, the Pirate Party network is in Europe kind of connected. They all have the same logo, they all have the same colors, and the principles of working is quite similar as well. In Latvia, for example, the Pirate Party is forming as well. And
I do know.
I think it is liquid democracy, in order to use it for ruling, is quite difficult, because it is, on the one hand, really slow. Meanwhile, we are forming a point of view of a party in a party, and to enforce this point of view, this argument in a political discussion with other parties, it takes a lot of time. And but on the other hand, I see that the longing among the society, among the persons who people who are ruled, they are longing more and more to get involved in the actual process of forming laws and making decisions, and that goes far beyond only the taking part in elections every 4 or 5 years.
Yeah.
And I think this liquid democracy will have its impact, but it's definitely how it is practiced right now. For greater communities, I mean, for Iceland this is quite less people, I mean, will work fine. But for example, for Swedish community or for Germans, they have to think of something to speed the process up.
Yeah, well, I agree with you, but there is actually a very interesting comment that actually Castells made in one of the latest books. I think it was Internet, the Galaxy Internet or something. Yeah, I think it was that. It says about all this movement and the idea of challenging democracy or challenging the representation in the political system. It says all of these groups are sort of gathering in a utopia, in a new utopia, that it's individuals making a new network, right? That is just happening to be online. But this is exactly what happened in the French Revolution. There were individuals making a network on ideas. So he says it's actually not much different. There is not much difference between one and the other. It's just happening now, it's going online, and now it's going faster. Exponentially faster than it used to be in the 17th, 18th century, of course. But from this construction of collective construction and utopias, there is a big difference between utopias and chimeras. When you start saying, okay, that's not possible, that's not going to happen, that is simply not possible, nobody will buy that story. Well, you by neglecting that chimera is actually giving credit to the network, because if you start talking about that, it's because something is happening. And I would agree very much of, yes, they're challenging the way of representing society, and eventually they will get something big. WikiLeaks is an example at the early stage. Now it's a bit distorted. But yeah, we can get along with a lot of more topics. I don't know if someone else won't make another question. I want to just divert the conversation to the left side. And yes, please.
My question is about the fate of the national state. Because from one side, of course, the internet is the great infrastructure for killing it. But from another side, if you talk about emotions, then you can really gather the emotions very effectively on social networks, and especially if it's happening in one particular language, that is not English. Yeah. It's also exploding the nationalist movement, I think.
Well, the point is that I'm just going to allow myself to go back to the furthest point, or the initial point when I said when I was saying that meaning is constructed through a process of community action. That is exactly what is happening. Now it could happen through the internet, but has happened in the past through other means, and not particularly by that interactive and fast-growing and exponential, quick way of communicating. But yes, has happened in a way of constructing both constructive and destructive meanings. The point of nationalism is that nationalism is a very much imagined sentiment. Right? We imagine ourselves belonging to something. And what that belonging is basically or essentially constructed by language, right? But togetherness, like daily basis cultural exchanging, right? We understand each other, we eat the same food, we sort of freeze in the same weather, blah, blah, blah. That constructs togetherness. And now something that is particularly important in the way of modifying culturally meanings. So by constructing a new meaning of, in this case, a nationhood, what we're trying to most likely undermine someone else's construction of meaning. And this is when it comes down to a clash. In a particular case of, for instance, Latvia, I see from a very early stage, because I'm not very much aware of the whole picture. It's very, for me, difficult to understand the whole picture of nationhood. But yes, it's an initial breaking point between the construction of meaning in one language, in one idea of world, and in another world. Now, it is compromising the whole nation? I don't think so. It's just compromising the idea of a collective construction. Is it possible to construct different meanings or the same meaning in different languages? Yes, of course. That happens, for instance, in India. In India, they speak 120 languages, right? And they don't understand each other. Or the northern Japan and the southern Japan, they use different Japanese. It's so different that they don't understand each other in some cases in a daily basis. Well, they're constructing somehow the idea of nationhood, yes, because they're going beyond that particular difference in order to construct meanings that are collective. The point is, I would say in this particular issue, the collective society needs to start constructing meanings that are beyond this language issue. For instance, political system. The political system should be beyond the language issue. But I don't know if that's so. This the answer that the level of discussion that you wanted to get, or is something else that is behind that. Because nationhood is a very complex issue, and it's very much again back to resemble history and the reconstruction of history in a process. Any other comment on, I don't know, questions? Right. Well, thank you very much for coming, and well, whatever, if someone needs to get in touch again, you probably got my details there, and yeah, feel free to email me or contact me in whichever platform you want. Bye.